to our panels, which is wonderful. So, we'll just take a deep breath for a second. Marguerite, are you joining us?
He's still in the 1950s. He didn't get the email. That'd be great. Excellent. He was on a party line. He didn't even get
Austin and Marguerite, would you like to introduce this item? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It will be a very quick introduction. The panels who have been advising the Council over the last 3 years are finishing their term on 30th of September. This is the opportunity for them to report their achievements to the governing body. We've got 3 panels presenting today. The other 3 will present next month. We did a summary report of their achievements in the agenda for today to give you a bit of background, but really the floor is theirs rather than mine, and the liaison councillors might want to introduce the achievement of their panels if you want to.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. Austin, are you going to stay there, or you're just there?
I will be sitting in the back in
Lovely.
case you need something.
Okay. Well, let's start with the disability panel, and Councillor Sharon Stewart is the liaison councillor for the disability panel, and I would like to warmly welcome the wonderful Colleen Brown. Lovely to see you, Colleen. And just before you start, I just wondered, Sharon, did you want to make any introductory remarks?
I was just going to say that I think it's been one of the most, I believe, the most important panels that we have. I think anybody with disability, you can be young, you can be old, you can be anybody, and I think the panel is very well represented, and I look forward to hearing what Colleen has to say. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. All yours, Colleen.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for allowing us to have this 5-minute wrap-up, and I give the apologies of our Chair, Clive Lansack, and our Deputy Chair, John Herring. They were unable to make it today. I believe, you've got the paper in front of you. I know you've read it. I'm not going to go through that. I just want to touch on a few highlights. I believe, like Councillor Stewart, that this disability panel is a very unique opportunity to forge a very important and useful relationship between our community and council officers in particular. I think that we have made in the last 2 years in particular, but over the lifetime of this council we've made, because I've been on it for 2 terms now, we've made some significant progress, and if nothing else, understanding each other. And I think that's really critical, because it's so easy to talk past each other when you don't actually have an experience of being disabled or having an impairment. I just did want to make an aside to pick up on your point, Deputy Mayor, that I think you should be giving yourselves a pat on the back for the unitary plan. I think it was an enormous success and huge undertaking by this council. And I know within the various communities that I work in, we've looked on with your deliberations with a great deal of interest. I think you've got the 4 major points there: creating accessible buildings, places and spaces, knowledge, communication, engagement, events and services in our workplace. Those are the key things that we've really looked at. I suppose for us the challenge is that so many of these issues are actually the responsibility of CCOs. And so that relationship, I think, is starting to be forged in a meaningful manner. And I think we've got some opportunities there to make some real inroads to make this city a truly inclusive city, and one that people with disabilities and disabled community can live in just like many other people do. You'll be aware that the New Zealand Disability Strategy is just in its final throes. I'm actually on that reference group, and I think we will bring some really important discussions to this table from that strategy as well. The challenges, I think, is actually something that slightly sits outside these 4 areas of that we've highlighted here, and that is housing. I was very interested to hear the previous discussion. I think with the intensification, a lot of the buildings are now 2-storied, multi-storied, many of those buildings don't actually have a toilet downstairs. So if you're a disabled person visiting friends, you can't actually, or family, you can't actually visit them because you can't go to the toilet. I think also some of the restrictions of having a person earning a full-time income are problematic for people accessing housing in this special housing areas. So they're very much reliant on Housing New Zealand homes being available. So I mean that's something we can tackle in the next term if you'll have us back again. And I would really hope that you do see the value of this relationship and that you will have the disability panel back again in the next third term. In closing, I'd just like to thank council staff. They've been hugely supportive of this panel, and Councillor Stewart for her taking up of a number of issues that we've passed to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen. Questions for Colleen? Councillor Casey.
Colleen, could you say a wee bit more about the relationship between the panel and the CCOs? Where have you made the gains?
Well, transport is a key one for us, and whilst transport actually have their own advisory group for disability, I think we also add value coming onto that as well on the back of that. Accessibility, I think, is always a big one. So for events, that's been interesting. I think we kicked off with the Rugby World Cup issues, not being able to have accessible portaloos. We've solved those ones and we've moved on. And whilst they may seem little issues, in fact, they're big ones if you're a person out and about and wanting to enjoy all that this city has to offer. I think just even crossing Queen Street and making sure you get your bobbles on the road, in the right place. That some of those things have just been very, very basic, but really important. And I think as we go through our relationship, as we get to know each other better, there's less questioning and more understanding, and we don't talk past each other anymore. But those are the two biggies for us.
And just a supplementary to that, we have 21 local boards. Did your panel forge any relationships with those boards? How did you cope with that?
We're aware of some of the local boards that are doing huge steps forward in that. It is very difficult as a panel to have a huge amount of impact on across 21 local boards. So I suppose we rely on policy or support from the governing body to help us achieve that.
Just if I may, one of the things the seniors panel and the rainbow panel did was invite the local boards to have a rainbow portfolio or a seniors portfolio.
Yep.
It may be that boards could have a disability portfolio.
They could. I have to say, within the disability leaders, we're spread pretty thin across across the country, plus within our own local regions. I mean, I think I sit on 4 or 5 disability related committees, and I think probably many of us would do the same, which takes me away from a lot of the work that I do myself. I think that for us is quite a challenge. Yeah. It's not to say we wouldn't consider it, but to have 21 boards setting up their own advisory panels.
No. The portfolio holder comes to the meeting.
Oh, sure.
They come to you.
Yeah, sure.
So it eases your workload.
Yeah, that could be done. Yep.
Thank you. Just before we acknowledge the panel, I was just saying to Dean, one of the things that I think we really need to work on as an organisation is visibility of staff with disabilities. I think that's something that is transformative in an organisation, and slowly but surely that kind of thing. And that's not people working in the disability sector, that's simply just staff working there who actually also happen to have some form of disability, and I think that will make a transformative difference. So I would very much like, hang on, we've got Councillor Penrose.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's a comment rather than questions, is that right?
Yeah,
Chair? Cool.
absolutely fine.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Colin, for your work to date on this. I know you're passionate about it. I just want to make a comment, Chair, that I still think we've got a long way to go. Huge way to go in this city to be the most livable city that the Mayor's been trying to lead, but those around this table. And why I say that is that, we're going into an election period where we continue to see a prudency, fiscal spending, keeping rates at 2%, but there's only so much stuff you can sell off. The time is going to catch up on us, and there's only so many staff we can lay off and reduce. And why I say that is
Point of
because...
order, Madam Chair. I hope that you take the same attitude towards the contribution from Councillor Penrose that you did to Councillor Lee.
I was lenient with councillor Lee, and by the third time I was
So-
less lenient.
so where I'm heading with this,
Councillor
Madam Chair, is
Penrose
that
has only spoken
we have...
once.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have massive problems across our region with our footpaths. And daily, we have our elderly and our young falling over and breaking some limbs of some description. And I look when some of our big key projects, like the St James Theatre, 15 million could go a long way to paving and making a better way for our city. And if I just walk around the CBD of Auckland, our footpaths are a shocker, absolute shocker, are a death trap to most people with disability. So, you know, I think we've still got some long way to go, and I think people need to take it on board if we want to make it the most livable city, but in particular for our disabled people.
Thank you, councillor Penrose. Okay, we've got a wrap-up recommendation at the end after we've heard from our three panels. So thank you, Colleen. Hugely appreciate the work you do. Now, our next panel is our Ethnic Peoples Advisory Panel. So warm welcome. Not too sure who's going to be speaking on behalf of our panel, but Councillor Denise Crum. Sorry, I just looked at Denise's name for a moment. Councillor Crum